Hello everyone, today I'll be narrating 3 new creepyposts that I found off of the Let's Not Meet subreddit. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel helps me a lot. After you've heard these stories, let me know what you think of them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
My fiance and I threw a dinner party one time to celebrate his mom completing chemo. I hired a caterer. We were expecting 25 friends and family, so it was more than the kitchenette of our single-story ranch house could handle. We'd also only just moved in, so didn't have a lot of cooking staples. The caterer said he'd bring everything 75% done, but he needed to finish off some dishes in our kitchen. I told him that was fine as long as he was finished by 5, because the kitchen is centrally located and we'd prefer everyone be finished before the guests arrive due to the intimate nature of the occasion. He said that would be fine. He arrives as scheduled at 12 p.m. We gave him until 5 and the guests aren't even arriving until 6, so it's plenty of time. He smelled bad. It was more than a sweat smell though. It smelled like a sun-baked diaper, and that made me uneasy because he was going to be preparing food for sick prior and young kids. I just made sure he washed his hands and then left him to his own devices, worrying I was being presumptuous. Throughout the entire process, he keeps pulling me aside to ask me questions and have me taste things. I was super busy because my husband had to work during the day and pick up the surprise guest right after, so setting up the deck, decorating, putting together the slideshow equipment, coordinating the surprise guest, we flew in her sister and I had to make sure she got an Uber at the airport and her hotel had worked out, etc., and just a million other little details. So every 10 minutes being asked things like, do you prefer this with paprika or without? With this, fine, whatever you think. Tasted to be sure was getting old. When he was still there at 5:45, after 2 gentle reminders, I flat out told him I needed him completely out by 6 no matter what. He apologized and said there had been a delay because our oven wouldn't stay up to temperature. I never had a problem with our oven, but I figured he's the professional, maybe it was a subtle problem. A little before 6 rolls around, a few of our friends start trickling in. I decide to tell him whatever's done is done and whatever isn't he should just put in the fridge, but he's nowhere to be found. I go out on the deck to ask my friends if they'd seen him and he's out there, alcoholic beverage in hand, out of his chef whites and now in a t-shirt and jeans, mingling with my friends. I walked out just in time for him to introduce himself to my cousin-in-law as a good friend of mine. Nope, too weird for me. I met him in person for the first time barely 6 hours ago. I told him he needed to leave now, so he goes inside and gets his bag and makes a beeline for my bedroom. I'm taken aback. I say, excuse me, where are you going? And he says, to change. So first of all, we have a guest bathroom clearly visible. Second, why can't he wear a t-shirt and jeans home? I tell him I'm not comfortable with him going to my room, but he insisted to only be a second and goes in and shuts and locks the door. I couldn't even get a word out before he went in and I felt helpless. I was going outside to ask one of my friends to help me usher him out, but at that point my fiance got there with my aunt-in-law. I had to explain the situation to him, nearly in tears at this point, and he was like, what? He went in the bedroom? Why? So he pounded on the door, and the caterer came out, still in a t-shirt and jeans, and my fiance said, you shouldn't be in there, you need to leave. And the caterer said, excuse me, but this is not your house. It is not up to you to decide. And my 6'4", 260-pound fiance tells him, yes, actually, it is his house, and puts a hand on his back and guides him to the door. The caterer says, I thought she lived here, referencing me, and he says, yes, my fiance lives here with me, and the caterer goes nuts. He turns to me and screams, you lied to me. I have no clue what he's talking about. He starts yelling about how I led him on and calling me more names. I don't know who he thought the man in the pictures with me around the house was. So my fiance says, oh no, you won't talk that way in my house, find the door. And the caterer goes in the kitchen and starts throwing the trays of food out of the refrigerator and onto the floor. At that point my fiance realized 2 of his brothers, both currently offensive linemen at the college level, had come in and were on the deck. He signaled to them and they came inside and he basically said, this guy's harassing my fiance. They helped my fiance out. The party then went on as planned, but I insisted we just order pizza and throw out all the food he made. My fiance and friends kept saying, isn't that a bit much, but I was insistent. We went out late drinking with his brothers and got home around 3:30 a.m. and passed out in our room. At around 5 a.m. I was woken up to the sound of the door opening. I figure either we forgot to lock the door in our drunken stupor and it blew open, or one of his family forgot their keys or something in the house and didn't want to wake us. His parents and his local brother have a key, but his parents never ever let themselves in when they know we're home, and his brother had even more than we did and was definitely not awake and driving around at 5 a.m. It wasn't nearly windy enough for the door to have blown open. It had been tranquil all night. So I wake up my fiance and whisper, someone just came in the house, and he said the same thing. Probably my brother left his wallet or something. I figure I'm being paranoid and try to put it to rest when I hear a loud crash sound. With that, my fiance was up and on his feet in one movement. He told me to lock myself in the closet and call 911 while he went and looked around. As I was pulling out my phone, we hear in that distinct accent, "Hello," and I realize it's just this insane caterer. I'm not worried about this caterer physically overpowering my fiance, or me for that matter, so I charge right out there. The caterer is shirtless and clearly on something. He's taking the pictures that are of just me off the wall and holding several in his arms already. He lunges toward me when he sees me. My fiance gets between me and him and I call 911. My fiance tells him cops have been called and it is in his best interest to get off the property. The caterer says, "No, I have to make sure your fiance is okay." And I say, "What? Why wouldn't I be okay?" And my fiance rightfully says not to engage with him and feed into it. My fiance stays between me and him while I climb out a window. He watches as the caterer throws photos of us on the floor. My fiance didn't want to subdue or touch him in any way, so the caterer couldn't make any assault claims. He's begun to destroy our kitchen at this point, and when the cops come in, he has a butcher knife. My fiance considered going for the gun safe when he first got the knife, since we live in a stand your ground state, but he decided the situation was hectic enough without introducing a firearm. The caterer doesn't obey the police's orders to drop his weapon, and he says he isn't leaving without me, so they tase him. It's lucky for him he only got tased and he didn't antagonize my husband into squashing him. As he's let out in cuffs, he's shouting how he and I are in love. He continues on this tirade the entire time police are reading him his rights. The police ask us to do an inventory of the house and see if anything's missing or damaged besides what we witnessed him do. We go around and there's nothing, but then I remember he was in our room yesterday and he went through the room. All of my underwear from the dirty laundry hamper were gone. We were so freaked out in the aftermath that we replaced all of our kitchenware, toothbrushes, sent our sheets to be professionally cleaned, and had a cleaning crew do a deep clean on the whole house. So glad we decided not to serve the food to our guest and my fiance's medically fragile mother. He sent me a letter from prison that thankfully my husband intercepted, because I was still recovering from the whole thing. We gave it to the police who helped us get issued a no contact order. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. This happened in May of 2015 in California, which will help those of you who are familiar. I had graduated college in June of 2014, moved back into my old hometown, and started a consulting company with my boyfriend, which is going very well. We had just finished a contract in the Bay Area, and were beginning a new one about 8 hours south in Torrance. He moved down there first to start setting up, while I took care of loose ends at our closing contract before moving down to meet him. The day comes and I pack my car and head down south to I-5. For the uninitiated, it's a straight highway with little in the way of scenery aside from the occasional strip mall, and its monotony has a reputation for putting drivers to sleep at the wheel. I pass a strip mall with gas and a fast food joint and decide to fill my car and my stomach. I go to park in the food venue's parking lot, but it's completely full, so I park across the street at a hotel, which at the time I didn't think anything of. I go inside to eat my meal, then cross the street to get back to my car. I'm well into the hotel parking lot when a pickup truck pulls down the aisle and cuts off my path and stops, with the passenger side facing me. The driver is alone and a clean-cut white male in his mid-30s. I don't remember anything about him except that he looked very generic and buttoned up. The way he pulled in front of me to block my path didn't initially set off alarm bells, as he has done it pretty organically. He rolls down the window and the dialogue follows. "Excuse me, miss, but could you please tell me where the grocery store in town is?" "I'm sorry, I'm not from here, so I couldn't say." "Oh, where are you from?" Good question, I don't know, not here though." I didn't say that to be rude. I had just moved through so many cities at that point and was on my way to a new one. I wasn't sure how to answer. He laughs and makes a joke, then asks me where I'm headed. I mention that I'm moving. I will say he was very charismatic, and at this point I just think he's trying to flirt with me, and if I hadn't been so exhausted or in a relationship on another date, it might have worked. He makes another comment about how unpleasant moving can be, and then gives a warm chuckle and extends his hand to shake mine and goes, "Well, I'm glad I got to meet you. I'm Scott." If you recall, the truck is in front of me with the passenger side facing me. I actually take a step forward to grab his hand, and then got the delayed response of every alarm bell that should have gone off earlier. I'm in a hotel parking lot. He asks me a question that establishes I don't know where I am, another question that establishes I'm alone, and another question that establishes I'm not expected at my destination for many more hours. The thing that connected all these synapses, when he extended his hand, he didn't make even the faintest effort to make it accessible to me. He didn't lean over the seat or move toward me in any way. His hand was hovering comfortably over the center console, waiting for me to grasp it, which in order to do I would have to lean well into the car. Again, I had already taken a step toward him and begun to raise my hand to take his when the sirens went off. I rocked backwards back to where I was standing, and I just remember looking in his eyes what felt like forever, feeling everything click into place while also half convinced my imagination was just running wild. His hand still waiting, I lowered mine and felt my eyes slightly narrow with suspicion, and slowly said, "I'm going to walk away from your car now, Scott." Boom. Truck burns rubber with thick gray smoke as the guy guns it out of the hotel lot at 100 miles per hour. He must have floored it. Regrettably smart on his end because I didn't have the license number or anything to offer the police. In the immediate minutes following the event, I felt relieved but hadn't really processed the full weight of what happened. Unfortunately for me, I had many more hours to think back and analyze the whole interaction to shreds. The car was somewhat lifted. There could have easily been another person or even 2 to 3 other people hiding inside. I still get creeped out about thinking how close I came to taking his hand, and how fortunate I was that I didn't allow my reaction to be driven by manners, as criminals often take advantage of. This happened when I was in high school long ago. My mom just recently found the paperwork about it when she cleaned out her office upon retiring from the police department. I remember being upset and scared when it happened, but reading the details as an adult, it sounded even worse than I remembered. I was a 17-year-old female working at a flower and gift shop. It's nighttime. A man comes in, short, overweight, balding, and 40 years old. He tells me about how he needs an apology gift for his girlfriend, so I offer a bouquet. Obviously, it's a flower shop. He says she doesn't like flowers because they die. This is the first weird thing, as he came into a flower shop. Then he goes into detail about how he hit her, and asks me if I think it was the right thing to do so. This was long ago, so I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "Not if you want her to continue being your girlfriend." He then tells me what a great job I'm doing and asks me when I get off work. I dodge answering and he leaves. Nothing for 6 months. Then right before Valentine's Day, he walks in the door 1 minute before close. It was dark, and from the outside it looked like I was working alone, as my coworker, about a 40-year-old female, was in the bathroom. Instinctively, it felt like a predator had just entered the room. You know when something isn't right, and everything felt not right. I then noticed he has a tarnished revolver tucked into the front of his windbreaker, which is halfway unzipped. It was obvious he wanted it seen. I quickly scribbled a note to my coworker that said he has a gun, and handed it to her when she came out of the bathroom. She calmly walked to the phone and looked at me, wordlessly asking if she could call the cops. I shook my head no, as I felt like it would escalate the situation. God forbid he heard the police coming and took us hostage or something. I was just going to try and act as calm and normal as I could, and hopefully not tip the situation into something more dangerous. He spends 15 minutes wandering around what was a fairly small shop. In retrospect, he was probably waiting to see if my coworker would leave, as it was now well past closing. Finally, he places an order for pickup on Valentine's Day, which gives me his name and info, which I'm going to for sure file with the police report. He buys a card and pulls out a wad of $100 bills, which he slowly thumbs through as though looking for the right one with which to pay for his $40 order. I ask him if he wants a bag, as it wouldn't be very inconspicuous if he just showed up at home with the Valentine's card. He replies, "No, I didn't feel like being inconspicuous tonight," which seemed like an obvious reference to the gun hanging out of his coat. He leaves. We quickly lock the door and watch him sit in his truck outside. We were not about to exit the shop until he was gone. Finally, he pulls out of his parking spot and moves to another spot further away and continues to just sit there. I don't know how long we waited, but he finally left. I called my mom crying. She called the police, who came to the shop the next day to take a report. I told my best friend at the time what happened. She told her mother. Her mother happened to work with the man and informed security at her job. She said he was very weird, creepy, and liked to talk about weapons a lot. Security at his job, it's a large company with government contracts and things having to do with tech and security, pulled him into the office and questioned him about it. He claimed it was a glove in his pocket, not a revolver. The police were pissed that this company made contact with him about it before they did, and he successfully dodged the cops' multiple calls and visits to his apartment. My mom, much to my teen fury at the time, made me quit my job, which was devastating as I loved it there. In retrospect, totally the right call. I never saw him again. Alright, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments below. But as always,
Have a nice day.